it's really cute when it's little, like kind of like my shoes. Like I wear a big shoe, and when I see the shoes in the store and they're like on the display, they're like size 5, size 6, and they look so cute. And then I pull out the shoe for me and I'm like, well, that's not the same. So hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode who knows what number. Welcome back to the dining room. This is a seat of your pants kind of episode because I realized it's been a couple weeks since I've been back here. Yes, as you know, if you've been watching, we've had some house project, we've had some other things. I almost wanted to call this episode like Knitting Follies, and I may still call it that because there have also been some knitting follies. But yeah, it's been one of those episodes where all the camera batteries were dead, the dining room got moved around. Anyway, we had to move equipment. It's just a seat of your pants kind of episode because you know why? I wanted to come and hang out with you guys. I haven't seen you in a few weeks and just wanted to say hello. I wanted to talk to you in the comments. I want to catch back up. So here I am sitting in my dining room with I'm just a girl with a camera hoping that you guys will hang out, you know? It's that kind of episode. I do have a half-finished beauty over here that we will talk about. I have a lace disaster that I'm staring at right now. I finished a pair of socks for my kid. We've been working on the house. Yeah, so it's been in October, and I know it's November now, just barely, but October kind of kicked my butt. So I don't know if y'all are in the, maybe it's my profession. October is a little bit rough, but if you have a fall slump or a fall craziness, yeah, that is October, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, we're gonna get into all of it. I usually tell you where you can find me. That is one stable thing about this podcast. I am Knitting the Stash just about everywhere. Obviously here on YouTube, where I have tons of back episodes and other how-to and instructional videos you can check out. Over on Instagram and Ravelry and everywhere else, I'm Knitting the Stash. And the main website is knittingthestash.com, and that is where the Flock Farm Yarn shop is. We've had a little resurgence of interest over there because Erica Field, her Shearing Day shawl is being featured by a Vermont, is it the Vermont Spinners Guild? Again, seat of my pants here. I talked about it on the last episode. They're using the Shearing Day shawl as their make-along for this year, their knit-along for this year. So we've been doing some Shorn 5 over there in the shop, knittingthestash.com, and that's where you can also find my online classes. So I have lots of classes about modifying garments and design work and all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, so that's where you can find me. So knitting follies, let me just start by saying when I finished my knitting for last night, I thought I had put the front hem on this sweater. Right? It seems like a simple thing, right? Like you would look at this sweater, very obviously it has a front, right? I mean, the back is the back, the front is the front. You'd think I could figure that out, but no. So at 9:45, I was like, I bound off and I was like, woohoo, I'm ready for the podcast. You know, and I looked at the sweater and realized I had done the back hem and not even done the back hem correctly. Now, because the back hem is supposed to be like, for me, I usually make those longer than the front hems. Anyway, so we're in a world of hurt at about 9:45 last night. And this is actually the moment, of course, where I turned to Spencer after I bound off the last stitch. And I said, you know, it's nice having knit so many sweaters because I feel like sometimes I don't make as many mistakes anymore. Yeah, so there you go. That was fate kicking my butt at 9:45 last night. And that's okay because there's been a lot of knitting follies. The lace folly is yet another one. I have ripped out this mohair lace twice now. No, twice. Yeah, this would be the third rip out. I managed to get this part of the pattern looking pretty good. These are the center double decreases. Yeah, but the increases, that's not what they're supposed to look like. But I didn't realize that until later because I was following the pattern. I followed the videos. I thought, oh, I got this. And that just doesn't look right. So I'm gonna have to rip out that lace again, the lace mohair. I don't even care if it falls off my needles at this point. I will probably not put in a lifeline because this yarn is actually pretty easy to pick up. There's a plain row before the lace starts. Or the mohair starts, so I will be able to pull out the mohair. I've been told put it in the freezer. I've been told pull down. I'm just a little concerned because this will be the third rip out, and I think mohair gets pissy after like rip out number 0. So we'll see how that goes. But I think I'll pick up my stitches just before I rip the rest of the mohair out. This one will come back on my needles because I'm very excited about it. It's a wonderful sweater. I just need to, I think I'm gonna practice swatching. It's like a lifted left twisted and lifted right twisted increase in mohair. And I think I must have gone into the wrong stitch, even though I was following the video and it looks to me like I was going in the right stitch. I must have been going in the wrong stitch. That's all I can figure. So I'm going to swatch with regular yarn, figure out what it's supposed to look like, then maybe swatch with the mohair and see what that's supposed to look like. It's been, like I said, it's been in October. So that sweater actually got ripped out twice, because the first time I started the mohair lace, I just continued the eyelets, the yarn overs down here instead of these other increases that are supposed to happen. And that's where the whole trouble started. Actually, that was the trouble with the mohair started. I actually messed this up. I think it had to pull this part out. Anyway, this sweater has been in timeout for a couple of weeks, and luckily for me, I had the Extra Lite Bright pullover on standby. So I was able to pick this one up and just get started on it. This has been a delight to knit, aside from me completely messing up them before the podcast. But it's a wonderful sweater. So let me just introduce you to it. This is the Extra Lite Bright by Wool & Pine. It's been on my favorite list for a very long time. And yeah, I just kind of got a wild hair and decided that I needed to knit this one to have something going on in the background, because I knew that this lace thing was starting to go astray. One of the things that's interesting about this sweater is these are the yarns that are the original yarns that the designer called for, as far as I can tell. This is the kit from Spun Right Round that's linked on the Ravelry page. That's my indicator. And I went ahead and bought the kit because I was looking at some of the project pages, and while I totally support everyone going their own way, for my eye and my aesthetic of what this sweater was what the designer was trying to do with the sweater, I really just liked the way that this color combo went together. So I went with the kit. As you know, if you've been watching for a while, I sometimes work with the yarn that the designer calls for. The lace yarn, for example, this is not the yarn, no. Some of it is. Some of it is the yarn the designer called for. Some of it is just my own random mohair that I picked out that's pretty close. And sometimes I will knit with the exact yarn the designer calls for. Sometimes I just go my own way. The main thing when you go your own way is that you've got to look at what kind of yarn, like how it's composed, what its grist is, like what fibers are in it, because you're not only just looking for like another fingering weight yarn. If you look for another fingering weight yarn and you get something that's like alpaca, it's going to behave very differently, or silk than say merino or something else. So anyway, you are trying to find the same kind of composition, even if you are switching things out. In this case, I went right with the yarn that was in the pattern because I loved the effect of this Extra Lite Bright pattern. And this is something Spencer and I were joking about on the last episode, which was a month ago, sorry. We were both talking about when we had light brights as a kid. And for anyone who's really young, you might not have seen the light brights. It's like this, I don't know what, it looks like a television set, or the ones we had as kids it looks like a television set with like a light bulb in the back and a screen on the front where you can put these pegs in. And Spencer and I, the difference was that he would just play with the pegs, and we had these black sheets that you would put over the front of it, and you'd punch it in with certain colors, so you'd get like a rainbow or a unicorn or whatever. Anyway, Light Bright is fun because it's these pops of color that seem like they're kind of coming out because of that light bulb behind the little glass or plastic things that pegs that you're putting in the board. So I thought this designer really captured that with this sweater, and I wanted to replicate it as closely as I could. So I went with the kit. This is from Spun Right Round, their classic sock. It is a superwash yarn, and I want to talk about that a little bit because I've knit a few sweaters with superwash yarn of late. And we need to talk about superwash yarn. But if anybody's curious about the colorways, I cannot tell you which one is which. I took a photograph before I started to make sure that I knew which one was which. But I can tell you it's Lagoon, Clairvoyant, Louis, Spaced Out, and Hologram. Don't know which is which. Sorry. The lightest one is this guy, and it just has some highlights of the like highlighter yellow, tiny bit of blue in there. And this is the color that you see all the way down to here where I split for the sleeves. You transition from this color into this color, which you can see is very close, except that this color has far more of the little speckles, and it adds the pink, the little bit of black, some green. So you're really getting like a little bit more color. And that's this portion here, right here. Each of these repeats of the fade that you're working ends up being like 3.5 inches. I haven't really seen too many podcasts about this sweater, and so I want to really dig into it a little bit because it's a very interesting construction in some ways. So you go from this color to the next color, which is very different, obviously, but it has the pinks. It has a lot of the same highlights. It's just that the base seems to be a little bit more of a gray blue, and that section you can see is right here in the center. And you go from this color to what is kind of like a turquoisey, like a very minty greenish kind of color. Again, it has a lot of the same highlights. So it has the pops of green and yellow, a little bit of white, a little bit of black, but then it has purple in it to kind of pick up on this gray purple that's in the background. And that section is down here. You can see that kind of clearly. And then you switch to your last. This was a 5-color fade. According to the pattern, you could do all kinds of different, you could do it all in one color if you wanted to. Just follow the construction of the sweater. I want to talk about why that might be a little funny in a minute. You could do it in 2 colors, 3 colors, 7 colors, 10 colors, whatever you want to do. You just have to shorten your fade transitions or adjust them. So this is the final color, and it is mostly blue, but it's kind of a light and dark blue. And so that pairs up really nicely with this because they almost end up a very similar color when you run into the kind of lighter blue there. So that's this section all the way down here, and you can see it a little better down here on the hem that was supposed to be on the front. So just imagine this is on the front, and this is the final color transition to the darkest blue. And you can see, I think you can really see where the highlighter like pops are. Like in here especially, you get that highlighter yellow in some really nice ways. Down here you're getting that green popping through, some of the purples. It's just a really, I don't know, I think it's kind of fun. Now some people knit this in the reverse. So they start with the darkest color up top and go to the lightest color. And that's one of the options in the pattern. The other option in the pattern is you can do short sleeve or long sleeves. I'm gonna do long sleeves, I think. Though I might be persuaded to do short sleeves because doing this fade all the way down the sleeves is something that I'm very interested in trying and doing, but at the same time, I'm also like, you know what? I'm just sitting here thinking about it, and I'm like, short sleeves sound pretty good right now. This sweater would lend itself very well to like spring, summer. I mean, that's kind of how it's designed in a way. So I don't really have many light sweaters, so it might be nice to have a lighter short sleeve version, and I guess I could always add the sleeves later if I wanted to. Anyway, that's something to come in the future. One of the things I want to talk about is knitting with this superwash yarn. Now I knit 2, maybe 3 sweaters recently with superwash yarn. I don't usually knit sweaters with superwash yarn because they tend to stretch and pull and kind of get out of shape very easily. And I'm not a huge fan of superwash yarn. If you know this, if you've been watching the podcast for a while, like I really like the woolly wools. I like yarn that it still feels like a sheep, kind of. And superwash yarn has goes through a very unique process that's also chemically intense, things like that. I wrote a chapter in my book that's coming out on superwash yarn and the history of it. So yeah, it's fraught. It's got some issues, but it kind of depends on your use. And I know that a lot of people really love superwash yarn. I know that for gift giving, it's wonderful. For projects that you need to wash a lot, like socks, for example, superwash yarn can be a real like godsend. But it just has some, it's very slippery and kind of, it doesn't have any of the scales or the kind of texture to it that makes it feel like wool. So it behaves very differently when you put it in big quantities of fabric like you do for a sweater. It's great for things like shawls, hats, you know, like smaller areas, smaller circumferences that you're going to wear close to your skin. All those, we know all these things, right? But if you put it in a sweater, you can sometimes end up with a big baggy thing that you really weren't expecting. So you have to kind of account for it. I often tell people to knit a size down if you're knitting superwash yarn, or to be very cognizant of the ease that you're planning, because it will end up giving you more ease once you wash it and dry it, even if you're blocking it. So anyway, superwash has its own challenges. One of the things about this sweater that I think is actually very cool and makes me think differently about superwash yarn is that because you're doing this fade, you're basically doing color work all throughout the body, and the color work gives the sweater a structure. And I've seen this with, you know, shawls and hats and other smaller cowls, things like that, you know, where you are doing color work with a superwash yarn. But I hadn't really put it together in terms of the sweater, and it creates a thicker fabric, obviously, and it just gives it a little bit more structure. So when I put this on, it doesn't just kind of like, that's the best way I can put it. It actually sits at the same points where I thought it would sit. So like the upper portion here, this doesn't pull down as easily because it just has a lot more structure to it, right? It has more kind of holding it together. Now the upper part is very different. So this upper part is, there's nothing going on up here. You could, the pattern talks about potentially doing that if you wanted to do your fade, start your fade earlier. But up here you can see there's no color work, there's no floats in the back, the only structure is the structure that you're giving it with the raglan. It's a compound raglan. And yeah, with like, you know, your cast on for your neckline, things like that are giving it a little more structure up here. But this part is the part that is going to hang on your shoulders, and this part does feel like it's going to sink a little and stretch and drape. One of the things that I'm concerned about, obviously, is that this neckline is also very low. So if we get a lot of stretching, because this is heavier down here than this up here, it might pull the neckline down. I know in some of the project pages, people were talking about how they finished the collar, the neckline, early on in the process so that they could get a sense of how much the neckline was going to provide structure for the upper portion of the sweater, for things like how much armhole depth you might need, and even just like how low this might end up going if this weighs it down a little bit. So I thought about doing that. I obviously didn't do it, but I am very curious to see how much structure I can get out of the neckline for this. Now, one of the things obviously about this sweater is I think it was designed to be a short sleeve, kind of springy, summery sweater. It's got the colors for it, the open neckline, the short sleeve construction, all those things obviously kind of make it look like it would be a spring, summer kind of sweater, which would, you know, align itself very nicely with a more open neck. If you're in the winter and you're wearing a sweater like this, it's not going to actually be, right? It's not like, there's no faux turtleneck here. There's no collar. There's no like, this is going to keep you warm up in the neck region. So, you know, I don't want to go so far as to like turn this into a turtleneck. That's not where we're going. But I am curious how much structure and how much it will change the sweater to kind of cinch it up with the collar. One of the reasons I wanted to podcast today, even though October was October, is just because if you are thinking about knitting the Extra Lite Bright, I thought it might be helpful to see what the neckline looks like when you're at this stage, just so that if you're trying to judge if this is a sweater that you might like or not, this might be a factor, and you may want to modify the neckline going into it. It is a top-down construction, so you could modify the neckline, and you could bring it so that it doesn't drop as far or as low in the front. In the back, you can see it's a pretty standard neckline, and in fact, it doesn't have any short rows built into the pattern. Spencer was asking me the other night. Good husband to know to ask that, I think. But there aren't any short rows built in because the neckline in the front is so open. So it's not a sweater that's obviously going to like ride up very easily. If anything, it's going to get pulled down more. So if you're thinking about knitting this sweater, one of the things to think about is that neckline and the fade that you're going to go for. I would definitely swatch. If I hadn't bought the kit, I would definitely be swatching this to see how the transition works. It's a big transition, so I don't know that I'd want to swatch the whole thing, but it would probably be worth it because you do get a sense. You can see where the transitions happen. There's this kind of middle portion where the yarns are really marled together here, and it happens again, obviously. You can see it most down here. I can't see it quite. From a distance, you can see a little better, like right here, at very even intervals. And when that marling happens, that's kind of the center of the transition. So yeah, Extra Lite Bright. Really enjoyed the construction of this. The compound raglan for the sleeves it's excellent. I thought it worked really well. And I'm working slightly out of gauge, but not totally, like maybe one stitch off. I also modified to make this an in-between size. So the pattern didn't have a size 37-ish, because that's usually what I go for if I'm making a sweater that's not meant to be like a big overlayer. If I'm looking for like closer fitting, but not negative ease, I'll go for like a 37-inch chest. So this sweater has like a 35 and a 39, I think, or 40, something like that. And I really wanted that in between because a sweater like this, I feel like if it's too much ease, it's not going to sit right, especially in the superwash yarn. And if it's too small, it's going to be tight, and that's not the look I'm going for. So I looked at the pattern repeat and for the transition, and it needed, I want to say it's like 16 stitches or something like that, maybe I think it was 16. So I just found a number that was actually divisible by 16 that was in between the two sizes. I was kind of surprised that they didn't just offer it, but it takes money and time to create another size, and 35 and 39 are pretty good sizes. So there you go. I just wanted 37. So it is mathematically possible, given the gauge that I have, to complete all of the colorwork charts, repeats, and everything, and still get to like a 37-inch bust. So yeah, this is what the back looks like. I am going to make I have to pull out my bind off and bring the yarn back in and make this longer, because this is the length of the front hem, which I thought I was working on last night. And otherwise, I just have to decide about the sleeves, and I think I'll probably do the collar as it is in the design. So yeah, great knit. Very fun because you're doing this colorwork marling fade thing. You're constantly doing something when you're working on the body. So yes, it is all stockinette, but I'm working with 2 needles because that's how I do colorwork, and it just kind of keeps it interesting because you're working with a chart that you repeat over and over again, but you're using different colors. It's just one of those ways to keep a stockinette sweater super interesting. Everyone who's seen this sweater, I'm not sure how it's going to show up on camera, but everyone who's seen this sweater, when I pull it out of my bag, I went to my knitting group and I went to somewhere else. Anyway, I pulled it out of my bag and people were just like, oh, what are you working on? It's such a cool looking, like they really, like this just looks really cool, like the fabric. So it is definitely a showstopper kind of sweater, I think. And it's nice that way because it is just a stockinette sweater, but it has so much else going on in terms of the colors and the designer's thought process of like creating these like pixelated blips, which is just really cool. So yeah, I've never knit a wool and pine pattern before. I've enjoyed it. So that's at least one review thumbs up for them. They do have some really beautiful sweaters, and I know people knit their sweaters quite a bit. I am gonna have, depending on if I do short or long sleeves, I'm gonna have a lot of yarn left over. Ideas? Hats, I guess. I know I could save them for like, I know I could do scrappy socks or blankets or things like that, but I'm much more of a hat cowl kind of person. So we'll see how much yarn I have left over. I'm not sure if it's enough to knit an entire other sweater, but that would be actually pretty interesting, because then you could do if you do long sleeves, you wouldn't have as much. Anyway, my problem, not your problem. Yeah, so that's Extra Lite Bright from Wool and Pine, and highly recommend, highly recommend. So the other thing going on is that I finished the second sock for my kid's socks. I will put some pictures in here. They have already been sent off, so that he will hopefully get them maybe next week. But finished the second sock, so no more socks on my needles. I think you all know I'm not a huge fan of socks. I will knit them when pressed, and I know that both Spencer and Zach really enjoy socks, so sometimes I will knit them for them just because, you know, I'm that kind of nice guy, you know. But I am gonna get back to the lace one. I still haven't decided if it's gonna be immediate or if I still need a little more of a timeout from that one. But Erica of Grapefruit and Gardenia, the Sharing Day shawl, she worked with me with Shore and Five, just sent me a Thea Coleman pattern that is a beautiful cabled sweater. And I've been looking for a cabled sweater cardigan. There are so many beautiful ones out there, but every time I go to look for them, I think to myself, it's not quite right because of this, it's not quite right because of that. Maybe I should do a little episode about like which cabled sweaters I didn't choose or something like that. But this new Thea Coleman pattern is really gorgeous, and that might be the next thing to jump on my needles. I'm not positive yet. This one has taken time, but it's actually gone pretty quick. So depending on if I do the sleeves or not, I might be able to get to Thea Coleman's sooner than later. I think I mentioned a Thea Coleman pattern earlier that was, I can't think of the name. I'm sorry. Like I said, seat in my pants. I will put the image and the name up here for you. It's a beautiful cardigan that has a very kind of deep V. It's almost like a grandpa cardigan kind of, but it's also cropped. I swatched for that one with some yarn from my stash, and it wasn't right. Like the color combo and the way that the cables were sitting just wasn't quite right. There's Arlo. I think that's a Brooklyn tweed sweater that I've been kind of obsessed with, but it's like for kids, and I want to make like an adult version. And I know some people have made adult versions of it, but the adult version looks a little bit not quite right. So it's like, oh, it's really cute when it's little, like kind of like my shoes. Like I wear a big shoe, and when I see the shoes in the store and they're like on the display, they're like size 5, size 6, and they look so cute. And then I pull out the shoe for me and I'm like, well, that's not the same. So yeah, trying to switch a child sweater into an adult sweater takes some design considerations that, yeah, you have to think through. And then there's this other beautiful sweater. You would totally recognize it. I will put it up here in the Cote. I think that's what it is. The sister version was in Len magazine, one of the early issues. But Cote is kind of like the sister or cousin of that sweater. Beautiful cables all over the place. There's something about that sweater that, again, doesn't quite sit right with me. And I think it's the way that the front is constructed. I love the pockets, and I understand that you would need to put in the structure that you put in for the pockets. But there's something about like actually the wearability of that. I'm like, I don't know. The pictures that they have on the website are usually from the side, which looks adorable. From the front, you know? So these are my thoughts on cabled sweaters. I'm always thinking to myself, like, love it, but don't love it. Love it, but don't love it. I think this Thea Coleman one that Erica sent might be the ticket. Anyway, so that's what has been going on in my knitting world. We've also been working on the house, and it's October, so it was lots of things at job, my day job. It's like recommendation season, P&T season, like all kinds of wonderful things been going on. Plus the book, here's your book update. We are in image permissions right now, so lots of wonderful images hopefully going in this book. But that's with the press right now to decide. And then we'll go on to copy edits. And I'm hoping this book comes out the end of next summer. And I'm gonna start a countdown probably 6 months before the book and give you some little stories and snippets of my research and some fun things I found along the way in writing this book about how wool survived the synthetic revolution. Yeah, we have a title. It's getting good. Things are going. So, the dogs are going to start barking. Things are going to get a little hectic, so I will probably sign off now. I do want to say thank you to the Patreons. That's Jennifer Rose, Kendra, Bethany, Laura, Lenore, and Nargis. Thanks for supporting the podcast. I'm going to do my best to get back in the dining room more often with more knitting and less folly. I hope all your knitting is going well. I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.